Greetings. Welcome to episode 5 of Indiana's Timeless Tales. The series currently comprises 5 books, with a sixth in the final stages of production. Actually, I'm in the editing process of that book right now. This book relates the story of Indiana from prehistory until the end of the American Revolution. In this episode, you will hear the story of the first French explorations and settlement of the area that became Indiana. December 1679. LaSalle reaches St. Joseph and Kankakee River portage. During an expedition on the St. Joseph River and through the region of the Kankakee River, René Robert Cavelier visited sites in present-day Stark County, Indiana. Sand dunes and swamp dominated this vast area, which teemed with wildlife including fish, waterfowl, and other animals. Robert René Cavelier, November 22nd, 1643 through March 19th, 1687. On November 22nd, 1643, Catherine Jesse birthday son, René Robert Cavelier. The boy entered the world in St. Herbland Parish, Rouen, France. His father, Jean Cavelier, was a wealthy wholesale merchant. René Robert Cavelier gained the title Lasalle from a family estate near Rouen. The boy at first studied to be a priest. He entered the Jesuit college, forfeiting his inheritance in the process. However, the life of adventure beckoned him, and he abandoned his education. Trading post. His brother Jean had settled in New France in 1665 with the Order of St. Sulpice. René followed him in 1666. He obtained a land grant from the Sepulchans. The land was north of Montreal, and he established a fort and trading post that became quite successful. Search for the Vermilion Sea. Through his dealings with the Indian tribes, he learned of lands to the west that intrigued him. He became obsessed with finding a passage west that would lead to the Vermilion Sea, or Pacific Ocean. Obsessed with the idea of finding the Pacific, he sold his land and holdings back to the Sepulchans. He outfitted his first expedition in 1670. This expedition consisted of 24 men and some canoes. The men traveled west on the St. Lawrence River, traversing Lake Erie and Ontario. The exact route of this expedition from this point on is unknown. They made their way south, eventually reaching the falls of the Ohio on the Ohio River. Here his men mutinied and returned to Canada. LaSalle attempted to explore further on his own, gave up, and returned to Canada. He and his group became the first Europeans to see the Ohio River. Some historians, however, dispute that he actually arrived at the river. Builder of forts. LaSalle dreamed of extending New France. He desired to build a system of forts to expand France's dominions into the Mississippi and Ohio River Valley. He began another expedition on August 7, 1679. This expedition set forth from Niagara on a ship he built, the Griffin. This was the first ship to travel on the Great Lakes. It followed a course up Lakes Ontario, Erie, and Huron. It continued down the length of Lake Michigan. Crossing lower Illinois, the expedition, after many difficulties, reached the Mississippi River. By January the 15th, they reached Starved Rock on the Illinois River. On this spot, he established Fort Crevecoeur. The site is now a state park, Fort Crevecoeur State Park. Louisiana Territory. There, on April the 9th, 1682, he reached its mouth and became the first European to travel the length of the Mississippi River. During this voyage, LaSalle claimed the entire Mississippi Basin for the French crown. The king later expanded this claim to the entire Mississippi River watershed basin. The French established New Orleans to fortify the lower portion of the river. The lands he claimed on this voyage became known as Louisiana. The Indiana Historical Bureau has placed a marker noting this event. Marker location, south of US 30 on County Road 50, east-north, Range Road, 0.6 miles east of LaPorte and Stark County line on the Kankakee River, Turkey Foot Conservation Area parking lot, Davis Station, Hamlet area, Stark County, Indiana. LaSalle's camp. LaSalle camped on a portage between the St. Joseph and Kankakee rivers. LaSalle was the first white man to enter Indiana, passing here again in 1681. May the 19th, 1681, LaSalle holds peace conference with Miami tribe, South Bend. Robert Cavelier de LaSalle made several trips into the area now known as Indiana and Illinois, during the years from 1669 through 1683. During this time, the Iroquois tribes from the lower Great Lakes region invaded the Indiana and Illinois area frequently. The wars between the tribes created a great deal of instability in the region, making Lasalle's explorations difficult as he explored the Mississippi River basin. Seeking to create stability, Lasalle held a peace conference in the heart of Miami territory. The Illinois tribes met with Miami under a huge oak tree called the Council Oak and signed a treaty that united these tribes against the Iroquois. The resulting alliance allowed Lasalle to explore the area in relative peace. Lasalle managed to reach the mouth of the Mississippi River in 1682. Lasalle died in 1687 during an exploratory trip as he sought to find the mouth of the river from the Gulf of Mexico. The Council Oak stood until 1991 when a tornado felled it. The Amerindians and early French explorers used the river systems and ancient native trails to travel into the region. One of India that became Indiana and also the other states. One of these was the Great Sauk Trail. Early explorers encountered the Great Sauk Trail as they explored northern Indiana. Many pioneer towns grew up along this trail, used by many Native American tribes. The transcontinental network of trails crossed through Davenport, Iowa, Rock Island, Illinois, and Detroit, Michigan. Visitors to Lake County, Indiana will find a historical marker noting its location on Van Buren Street at West 73rd Avenue, Old US 30, Lincoln Highway, on the traffic median east of Calumet Cemetery, and West Broadway, State Road, Merrillville, Indiana. Archaeologists have determined that the mastodons used portions of this trail, suggesting a long-term use of the trail to just after the Ice Age. The trail intersected with other trails like the Buffalo Trace that traveled from Kentucky along the Mississippi River. Traveled from Kentucky to the Mississippi River through current-day Vincennes. Established first as a trading post on October the 28th, 1702, by French Lieutenant General Sieur Jacquereau of Montreal, Vincennes is the oldest continuously inhabited European town in Indiana and one of the oldest west of the Appalachian Mountains. The French abandoned the post after Jacquereau died, even though it was a successful trading post. Historians do not know exactly where this post was, but they surmise it was near the spot where the Buffalo Trace crossed the Wabash River. A few years later, Francis Marie Bissot, Sieur de Vincennes, officially founded the new town in 1732. The location near the junction of the Wabash and White Rivers and the Buffalo Trace proved a fortunate choice. He encouraged the Pinkeshaw tribe to build a village nearby along with Canadian settlers. The remote location proved a difficult place to bring supplies into. 4 years after he established his town, Chickasaw Indians captured him and burned him at the stake. The French renamed the town Vincennes to honor him. They built Fort Wioton to defend the village. 1715, the French established Fort Miami. The St. Joseph and St. Mary's rivers joined to form the Maumee River. This area became an important portage point for travelers seeking to go to the Mississippi River, as they could travel up the Maumee, portage to the Wabash, and hence descend to the Mississippi. The Miami tribe established their capital, Kekionga, at the site. The French, seizing upon the strategic importance of the area, built a trading post at the junction of the river in 1715. In 1722, the French built a palisade fort on the site, naming it Fort des la Miami. This was the first of 5 forts that would guard the river junctions. Huron warriors, allied with the British, attacked and took the post in 1747. The French rebuilt the fort during the French and Indian War, but lost it in November 1760 when they surrendered it to the British. Warriors attacked the British during Pontiac's Rebellion. Britain reoccupied the forts, rebuilding the fort and trading post, naming it Fort Miami. During the American Revolution, a military force under the French cavalry officer Augustin de la Baume's force remained a few days and then departed to raid another post, leaving a small contingent behind to guard it. The Miamis returned from a hunting party and attacked the small force guarding the fort. They took the fort and once again burned it. The British lost control of the region after the American Revolution. The natives continued to support the British and led several attacks against the Americans. American forces under General Anthony Wayne targeted the area during the Northwest Indian War. Wayne's army took the fords after the Battle of Fallen Timber and built a new fort, which would be called Fort Wayne in 1794. military abandoned the fort in 1819. Visitors to Fort Wayne will find an Indiana Historical Bureau historical marker denoting the site at this location. And there's also a recreation of the last fort to occupy that location. The French, in their bid to control North America, built Fort Wheaton in 1717, making it the first European structure in what we call the state of Indiana. They named it Ouiaton, a Ouia word meaning place of the whirlpool. The French encouraged the growth of the fort as a trading post for the local tribes. It soon became one of the more important trading posts in the region, perhaps having as many as 2,000 to 3,000 inhabitants. Its location, about 18 miles below the mouth of the Tippecanoe River, and about 5 miles south of the current city of Lafayette, was opposite a large Ouia village on the banks of the Wabash River. French fur traders descended the Wabash once a year to trade goods that the natives needed for the furs they had gathered. Many of these traders remain in the village, often described as the finest trading post in the upper country. The village inside the stockade consisted of a double row of 10 houses, a chapel, blacksmith shop, and trading places. Outside the walls, almost 90 houses stood. During the approximately 45 year of French occupation, the French and natives coexisted in relative peace. Visitors may visit a replica of Fort Ouiatenon, constructed by Dr. Richard B. Wetherwell in 1930. Archaeologists have determined the actual site of the fort about a mile downstream. The National Register of Historic Places has listed the actual location of the fort in 1970. The 18-acre park is open to weekends from May through September. Historic Fort Ouiaton Park, 3129 South River Road, West Lafayette, Indiana, 47906. You can phone them at 765-476-8411. Visitors to Lafayette will find an Indiana Historical Bureau historical marker denoting the site at this location. On April the 21st, 1749, we find the first church record of the Vincennes Old Cathedral. The old cathedral near the Wabash River in Vincennes, Indiana, it is an inspiring place to visit. The church is open to visitors during daylight hours. Take care not to visit the church during Mass, as it is an active Catholic church. The staff does offer guided tours, however. Visitors may elect the tour on their own. Near the front door, visitors will find an informative brochure about the lovely cathedral that relates to its fascinating history. The stained glass windows inside the church are stunning. The high altar is impressive as well. On each side of the church, a stairwell leads down to the crypt, which holds the remains of the 4 bishops of Vincennes. St. Vincent Xavier established the church. French Jesuit priests established the Church of St. Francis Xavier in 1734. They named it after French Jesuit apostle Francis Xavier, co-founder of their order. The first church record dates from April the 21st, 1749, and records a marriage between Julien Trottier and Josette Marie. The parish is the oldest Catholic parish in Indiana. There's 3 churches on the site. The current church is the 3rd church to occupy the site. The first church, built in 1732, consisted of logs pushed into the ground and topped by a mud-daubed roof. The second church, a log building, was constructed in 1770. The library building, constructed in 1840, stands on the site occupied by that church. The current church construction began on March the 30th, 1826, and served as a cathedral for 4 Catholic bishops from 1834 until 1877. Visitors may take self-guided tours from 8:15 a.m. through 3:45 p.m. daily. Visitors cannot tour the building during Mass. For more information, call 1-800-886-6443. The Old Cathedral Library and Museum is located behind the Old Cathedral. Visitors will find the Old Cathedral Library and Museum. Pastor Father Benedict Joseph Flaget started the Old Cathedral Library in 1794 to serve as a community library. The library expanded in 1840 with the addition of Bishop Brute's personal collection of over 5,000 books. The parish built a small brick building on the Old Cathedral grounds to house this collection. By 1968, the collection had grown to over 11,000 books. The Lilly Endowment in Indianapolis provided a grant in 1968 to construct the new building. The collection includes a papal bull issued by Pope John the 22nd in 1319. Visitors will also find prehistoric stone tools, old maps, paintings, Governor William Henry Harrison's peace pipe, and various religious and American relics. The library also has some Abraham Lincoln memorabilia, among other things. Old Cathedral Library and Museum, 205 Church Street, Vincennes, Indiana. I've already given the phone number. In the next episode, I will relate the story of the Ohio Company and the first of the English expeditions into the upper regions of the Ohio River Valley by explorer Christopher Gist. Find out more about Indiana history by purchasing the book Indiana Timeless Tales Prehistory to 1781. The book includes the early history of Indiana from the time the glaciers melted until the final days of the Revolutionary War. The book includes sketches of the native tribes that inhabited the state, as well as French outposts established during colonial times. Find it on my website, www.mossyfeet.com. There are links to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Google Play, and other online booksellers. You may choose to purchase a book in either ebook or softbound versions. An audiobook is available on Google Play. Residents of southeastern Indiana can find my books at the Walnut Street Variety Shop on George Street in Batesville. At the conclusion of this series, I will compile the episodes into an audiobook. The audiobook will be available on Audible, Amazon, Apple, Barnes & Noble, as well as many other online audio booksellers. You can order these books direct from me, the author, at my webpage. If you wish me to sign the book, just send me an email at mossyfeetbooks@gmail.com requesting a signed book and instructions on how you want me to address it. Note, if you send me an email, I will add you to my contact list. Readers on the list will receive an email from me announcing when I publish a new book. If you do not want me to add you to the list, tell me and I will not add you. Listeners to this podcast that want email notifications of my new releases can just send me an email requesting addition to the list. You can choose to have your name removed at any time. If you browse the website, you will find dozens of sample chapters, one for each of my books. I hope you enjoyed this podcast and thank you for